What's up, Midnight Strikers? I am back for another classic review, and this time we're going to be talking about a band that gets a lot of flack when it comes to rock and metal community and the mainstream media. We're going to be talking about a band that is compared often to bands like Puddle of Mudd and Nickelback and Hinder. We're going to be talking about Creed today. So Creed, fronted by Scott Stapp, who is mainly known for his 2014 meltdown about living in the back of a truck and assassinating President Obama and all that blah 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 stuff. Back in the day, it was actually a pretty decent stand-up Christian guy. I know stand-up and Christian don't normally go well together, but no, not going to get into that. This is the album we're going to be reviewing today, Human Clay by Creed, and a lot of people seem to ignore the fact that half of Creed's discography is actually pretty fucking good. I mean, they look at some of the songs like My Sacrifice and Don't Stop Dancing, and what's another one? Away in Silence, and Higher with Arms Wide Open, and kind of judge Creed based on these songs, especially with My Own Prison, the lyrics kind of having a Christian connotation to them. They labeled them a Christian rock band. This couldn't be further from the truth, as evidenced by Scott Stapp actually going out and saying, hey, we're not a Christian rock band, we are Christians, but the band as a whole is not. I mean, fuck, even every band under the sun, practically, in the rock spectrum had to defend themselves against these allegations. I mean, Linkin Park, for God's sakes, had to defend themselves against being labeled as Christian. You know, of all bands. So, when it comes to this, though, Human Clay, a lot of people misinterpret some of the lyrics as being Christian, even though none of the lyrics on this album are really geared towards that. So, to get started, this is actually the first rock album I have ever heard, and this is in the midst of my family listening to nothing but radio, pop, and rock, and country. My mom listened to the radio stuff, my dad listened to country, and I generally fell on the country spectrum of that because I didn't like pop at all in the slightest, even back then. You know, I had ears, basically, I had hearing, but I did not like any of the soft stuff. I liked mainly the stuff that was guitar-driven, in your face, had a lot of action in it, as I would say back then, basically meaning it had an upbeat tempo and kept its speed going pretty well. Of course, that would be very similar to the rock I listen to today, even though I've kind of differentiated my taste a little bit for music, but nevertheless, this is a very solid album, whether or not you want to believe it. So, like I said before, half of Creed's discography is really good. My Own Prison is a phenomenal debut album. Listen to the whole thing in its entirety. Don't just listen to a couple songs, or even one song, and just basically blow it off, because it's a really decent album. Really good album, in my opinion. I do, of course, like this one the best. This is my favorite Creed album of all time, but we will get into that in a little bit. Like I said, half of their discography is really good. The other half, while it's decent, it's missing quite a few things that made their first two albums such phenomenal successes. I mean, Weathered is, of course, the better of the two, Full Circle and Weathered, but it has a lot of problems, such as being way too commercial, way too soft, and it just doesn't have the variety or the diversity that the first two albums had, and really the cohesion, holding the songs together, making it so that one song, you know, sounds like it's way over here on this side of the spectrum, and the other one is over here. It just doesn't fit together, if that makes sense. Like having Bullets right before Don't Stop Dancing, if they would have done that. You know, it just doesn't make sense. It's all over the place, and it doesn't really flow together. Full Circle, on the other hand, while it's a decent album, it just fell short. Enough said. Anyways, Human Clay, though. Dial it back to 1999 when they released Human Clay. Like I said, first rock album I've ever heard, and I was blown away by it just by the first track. Are You Ready is still one of my favorite Creed songs, though I do like What If, the next song, a little bit better, just because of its beginning intro that I suppose was supposed to pay homage to Paint It Black by the Stones, which I can kind of see, but it's different in its own regard. It starts off very soft and very, you know, smooth, and kind of gets even heavier as, you know, the lights dim, and then it just explodes, basically. Just listen to the music video if you don't believe me. It's just a great song, absolutely phenomenal lyrics and vocal delivery on Scott Stapp's part, and everyone who says that Creed is soft should listen to this song. One of my ex-girlfriends who absolutely hated Creed just because she had heard Higher and With Arms Wide Open. She hated Creed. She was like, okay, these guys are shit. I'm so glad that they went to Alter Bridge. They're so soft. I showed her this song, and she was silent. She had nothing to say but praises. She also hated Bon Jovi, on a side note, but then I showed her Keep the Faith, and that kind of, got her to like the bands too. So don't judge a band just by one song. I know I should probably take that advice for a couple bands I bash, but, it is what it is. Great album. One of my favorite songs on here is also Say I, just because it kind of keeps the same pacing throughout, and I don't know, it's just a pretty great song. It's very heavy. Scott Stapp utilizes that rasp in his voice that is just so prevalent on every single album, with the exception of Full Circle, because he lost that ability, but I digress. Faceless Man is another one. It starts off very peaceful, very calm and tranquil, and then just kind of takes off until the very end, where it's just kind of like the climax, basically, and it kind of builds up from there, I suppose, when, like I said, Scott Stapp starts singing very grittily, or he gets that grit in his voice again, and it's just a good song overall. Never Die, kind of the same thing, but, it's kind of like Say I, where it just kind of keeps the same pace throughout the entire thing, but it sounds great. The choruses are a little bit more aggressive than the verses, but they do go very well together. Higher, of course, is one of the singles. I'm not doing a track by track here, by the way. Just, there's so many songs that I want to list off and tell my opinions on that I'm just listing off the songs that I like. Higher is probably one of my favorite songs. I know a lot of people give me flack for this, but I'm a Creed fan. I can't deny it. Of course, now I like Alter Bridge and Tremonti just a titch better, but I do have a special place in my heart for Creed, or in my ears, I should say. So, Higher is one of my favorite songs, even though it is one of those songs that really launched them into the limelight, launched them into stardom. People seem to not like it just because it's very commercial in nature, but that's really all that plays on the radio. That's all that gives you radio airplay, and it's a very catchy song. I like, especially the guitar riff in the beginning is really catchy, and it's just got a good feel to it. I mean, it makes you feel good just listening to it. I don't know. It's very uplifting, I should say, much like other bands have those kind of songs, much like Shinedown on Amaryllis. Kind of makes you feel like that, even though that came out 13 years later. So, With Arms Wide Open, this one was written for his son, I believe, when Scott Stapp found out he was going to be a father. And, being a father myself, this song carries on a whole new meaning. And it's just a very heartfelt and soft number that really gets you going, especially when you can relate to it. So I really like this song. It's very powerful, like I said, very uplifting. And it's basically symbolizing a new beginning. It's a very good song. So, Young Grow Old. I know this one isn't technically on the album, but I put it on here just because back in the day, people were claiming it was on a hidden deluxe version. But I believe it was a single for WWE. I could be wrong on that, but I'm not entirely sure. Probably should have looked it up before this. But one of my favorite songs, Scott Stapp basically sings in his aggressive, gritty style of vocals and just punches through the entire thing, the entire way. And it's a very fast-paced song, or at least it is for Creed standards. It's a very, very fast-paced song for Creed standards. It's very aggressive, and I don't think Scott Stapp would ever sing like this again, this, gritty, until his 2005 solo album on the first track, Reach Out. So, with all that in mind, I'm probably going to give this one a 9 out of 10. No, 9.5. 9.5 out of 10. I really like this album. The only song that really, that I could really find anything wrong with, probably Beautiful and Wash Away Those Years, just because they don't really get going fast enough. I mean, Beautiful is a little bit better because it builds up that intensity as it goes along, but then it kind of falters a little bit, which I don't really care much for. Wash Away Those Years just kind of takes a while to get going, even though I know what kind of song they were trying to make, it doesn't really pick up until about halfway through the song. So, other than that, though, I mean, this album's practically amazing. This is a masterpiece album, and not a lot of people recognize it for that, and it's a shame just because of Scott Stapp's antics and the fact that they were labeled as a Christian rock band. So, with that, that's really all I have to say. This is a great album. Check it out. Don't listen to the haters. This is Midnight Strike 3625. Keep calm and rock on.